You never think fixing a stranger's car will flip your life upside down. But that's exactly what happened to me that dusty afternoon. I was wedged under the frame of an old, rust-covered Chevy, trying to coax life back into it. My back was screaming, hands slick with oil like always, when I heard a vehicle cough and die right outside the garage. Then came a voice, sharp, anxious, not from around here. "Hello? Anyone here?" I slid out from under the car, wiping my hands on the same pair of coveralls that had seen better days, and looked toward the sound. That's when I saw her. Young woman, dressed like she walked out of a fashion magazine. Definitely out of place in this rough neck of the woods. Her high heels tapped nervously against the concrete as she approached. "My car broke down," she said, pointing over her shoulder at a sleek black coupe, parked halfway on the curb like it had just given up. The car didn't belong here. Honestly, neither did she. "Well, you're in luck," I told her, keeping my voice steady, even though she stuck out like a sore thumb in this gritty little patch of town. "Pop the hood. I'll take a look." She hesitated for a second, glancing at her phone like she had somewhere important to be. "Can you fix it fast? I've got a schedule." "We'll see what we're dealing with first," I said, already reaching for my tools. The moment I peered into the engine, it was clear. She didn't have the slightest clue about cars. Radiator was nearly bone dry, a few wires hanging loose. When I pointed it out, she bit her lip like she was trying to hide how clueless she was. "So, can you fix it or not?" she asked. "I can," I replied, fighting the urge to smile. "But it's gonna take a couple hours." She let out a groan and started pacing, heels clicking like they were protesting every step. "Fine. I'll wait." She wasn't exactly patient, but I put my head down and got to work. By the time I finished, the sun was on its way down, painting the garage in orange light. She was leaning against the wall, phone in hand, scrolling like her life depended on it. "All done?" I said, wiping my hands on a rag and standing up. She looked like someone who'd been holding her breath all day and finally let it out. "Finally," she said. "Thanks. How much do I owe you?" I gave her a fair price, nothing special, just what the job was worth. She blinked at me, dug into her designer handbag, and pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Keep the change," she said, handing me way more than I'd asked for. "That's too much," I started to say, but she was already turning back to the car. "Consider it a tip," she called out, before firing up the engine and driving off, the sound fading into the evening. I didn't think much of it, not until later that night. I was about to crack open a cold beer and catch the game when a knock came at my door. When I opened it, a guy in a sharp suit stood there holding an envelope. "Mr. Bennett?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, a little cautious. "Who's asking?" He held the envelope out. "I'm here on behalf of Miss Brooks." Didn't ring a bell until he added, "The lady whose car you worked on today." I frowned. "Is something wrong?" I told her everything should be fine now. "It's not about the car," he said, his face unreadable. "Miss Brooks wanted to thank you personally. She's not your typical client. Something about the whole thing didn't sit right, especially that envelope." My gut twisted a little. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, letting him in. He walked in like he belonged in a skyscraper, not in my worn-out living room with peeling wallpaper and a couch I got secondhand. "Make yourself at home," I said, maybe with a bit too much sarcasm. He didn't sit, just handed me the envelope. "She asked me to deliver this to you directly. Says you went above and beyond." I opened it slow. My rough fingers felt clumsy against the crisp, expensive paper. Inside was a check. My heart skipped.
$52,000.
"You've got to be kidding," I muttered. "This some kind of joke?" "No joke," he said. "Miss Brooks has her reasons." "What reasons?" I asked, suspicion crawling into my tone. "I fixed her radiator, not her entire world." He gave a small smile. "Let's just say she appreciates people who do good without expecting anything back." I stared at the check like it might bite me. That was more money than I'd ever seen in one place, let alone touched. Could wipe out my debt, breathe life into my shop, maybe even give me room to think bigger. But there was something about it that felt too easy, like there was a string attached I hadn't seen yet. "What's the string attached?" I asked, my voice low, a little suspicious. There isn't one, the lawyer said, smooth as silk. It's a gift, plain and simple. I wasn't buying that. People like her don't throw around that kind of money unless there's something they want. Still, I nodded and tucked the check back in the envelope. Well, if she needs more work done on that fancy ride of hers, she knows where the shop is, I said, trying to keep things casual. He gave a polite little nod. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Bennett. Take care. Next morning, I was still trying to make sense of what had happened when I got another curveball. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop outside the garage, and out stepped Vivian Brooks herself. Gone was the frazzled, flustered woman from yesterday. Today she looked sharp every inch the power player. You could feel the confidence coming off her like summer heat on pavement. Miss Brooks, I said, wiping the grime from my hands. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. Call me Vivian, she replied with a small, polished smile. I wanted to thank you in person. Didn't your lawyer already handle that? I asked, doing my best not to sound rattled. She let out a soft laugh. He did. But I think some things are better said face to face. Something in her voice made me pause. Maybe it was the honesty, or maybe just how out of place it felt in my greasy little shop. She stepped closer, eyes drifting over the place. This your setup? For better or worse? I said with a shrug. Lately, mostly worse. Her look softened a bit. You're good at this. You could charge double and still have people lining up. Not around here, I said. Folks don't have that kind of cash. She nodded like she already knew that. What if I told you I could change that? Not just for you, but for everyone around here. I furrowed my brow. What do you mean? Her smile turned into something I couldn't quite read. I've got a proposal, but it's not the kind of thing you talk about in a place that smells like motor oil and rust. She pulled a card from her purse and handed it to me. You free for dinner tonight? Dinner? I asked, caught off guard. With you. I wasn't sure if I should be flattered or nervous. I don't usually mix meals with business, I said carefully. Then think of it as a favor, she replied, her tone leaving no room for back and forth. Pick me up at 8. I'll text you the address. And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, wiping my hands on the same old rag, wondering what in the hell I just got pulled into. The rest of that day flew by like a dream I couldn't quite wake up from. And when I pulled up to the place she'd picked, some swanky restaurant where the napkins probably had a wine list of their own, my nerves were shot. My beat-up pickup looked like an alien among all the shiny luxury cars out front. But I killed the engine and walked in anyway. Vivian was already there, sitting at a quiet table in the back, dressed like she belonged in a magazine and not even pretending to be uncomfortable. You clean up well, she said with a teasing glint in her eye. Thanks, I muttered, pulling out the chair and trying not to feel like a stray dog at a black tie gala. She didn't waste any time. You're probably wondering why I'm doing all this, she said, leaning in a bit. It did cross my mind, I admitted. She looked serious now, her whole vibe shifting. I grew up in a neighborhood like this, she said. Folks had each other's backs, but nobody had money. My dad was a mechanic. Just like you. He taught me about honest work and about giving back when you can. I stared at her, trying to square the woman sitting across from me with the story she was telling. And you think handing me a check is giving back? I asked, still not quite sold. That was just the start, she said. I want to invest. In you. In your shop. In what you can do. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Invest? In me, I said, trying the words out like they were in another language. Vivian nodded. You've got talent, Lucas. But more than that, you've got something rare, integrity. That matters. She leaned back, letting her words sink in. I see potential. Not just in your skills, but in what you could do for this whole town, if someone just believed in you. I stared at her, heart pounding. This wasn't just dinner anymore. Why me? I asked, the doubt still creeping in from the edges. There's better mechanics out there, I said, half trying to talk her out of it, half trying to convince myself. Bigger shops, more experience. She held up her hand, stopping me mid-sentence. I didn't pick you because you're the best wrench turner in the country, she said. I picked you because you helped someone who needed it, and you didn't try to bleed them dry. That's rare. That's who I want in my corner. I sat there quiet, not sure what to say. Part of me wanted to jump at the offer with both feet, but another part kept waiting for the punchline. I looked her dead in the eye. What's the catch? She gave me a small smile. No catch. Just a whole lot of work, and a shared goal. If you're interested, she went on, we'll get the paperwork started. Make it official. And if I'm not? Then you keep the money, she said, calm as ever, leaning back in her chair. No strings. But something tells me you're not the walk-away type. She was right. I didn't walk away. Over the next few days, Vivian rolled out her plan like she'd been crafting it for years. She talked about upgrading my garage, bringing in high-end tools, and, get this, setting up a program to teach local kids the trade. Real skills. A real future. Sounded too good to be true. But the more she explained, the more it clicked. She wasn't just tossing cash around. She had a vision, and she wanted me at the center of it. By the end of the week, I had my name on a stack of papers I never thought I'd sign in this lifetime. And then the changes started. The first thing she did was bring in a crew to gut the place. Ripping out rusted panels, patching up cracked concrete, and swapping my worn-out gear for shiny, top-of-the-line stuff. I watched it all happen, like my life was being rebuilt in real time. Vivian was there every day, walking the job site, checking progress, asking questions like she'd been doing this her whole life. She had that kind of drive that made you feel like quitting just wasn't an option. You're not just fixing cars anymore, she said one afternoon as we stood in the middle of the half-finished shop, sawdust floating in the air. You're building a legacy. That stuck with me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel stuck. I felt part of something that mattered. But not everybody was thrilled with my so-called success. A few of the local shop owners started talking, whispering. One guy walked into the garage one day, arms crossed and attitude thick as mud. You think you're better than the rest of us now? He sneered. I think I'm trying something new, I said, keeping my voice even. Yeah, with her money. He threw a glance at Vivian, who was across the room talking to one of the contractors. My fists clenched, but before I could say anything, she stepped in. Is there a problem? She asked, her voice cold enough to make the air drop a few degrees. The guy muttered something under his breath and shuffled out. You didn't have to do that, I told her once he was gone. I know, she said, but I'm not about to let anyone disrespect what we're building here. And she meant it. As the place came together, fresh paint, new lifts, a whole new layout, I felt like I was finally stepping into the life I'd always dreamed about but never thought I could reach. The shop wasn't just cleaner, it had purpose. And so did I. But with growth came the baggage. People started talking not just about the shop, but about me and Vivian. Whispered rumors, side glances, all that high school nonsense repackaged for grown-ups. At first, I let it slide. But when one of my oldest friends brought it up, I lost it. You think I'm doing all this for a paycheck? I snapped. You think I'd throw everything I've built on the line just to cozy up to someone with deep pockets? I don't know what to think, he admitted. But folks are talking. And it's not just about business anymore. I knew exactly what he meant. I just didn't feel like feeding into it. I focused on the work. That was the only thing that felt solid. Vivian? She didn't seem fazed. Let them talk, she said one night when I brought it up. People are always going to gossip. That's what people do when they see someone rising. Her calm was comforting, but it didn't make the noise go away. The grand reopening was set for 3 months out, and as that date crept closer, I started pushing harder than ever. Long days, late nights. I wanted that shop spotless, humming like a well-oiled engine by the time the doors opened again. Vivian was right there in the thick of it. Somehow, no matter how tired I was, she had more energy in reserve. One day, this place is going to be a beacon for the whole neighborhood, she said to me one night as we turned out the lights and locked the doors. I can feel it. When the big day finally rolled around, it hit like a thunderstorm, buzzing with nerves, excitement, and a whole lot of folks wanting to see what all the fuss was about. What used to be a rusty box of a garage was now something else entirely. We had top-notch tools, a waiting room that didn't feel like a hospital lobby, and even a corner set aside for community classes, the idea Vivian had been so fired up about. Neighbors came out in droves, some curious, some skeptical. When she handed me this giant pair of scissors for the ribbon cutting, I almost laughed. Couldn't believe it was real. "This is your moment, Lucas," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I cut the ribbon, crowd cheered, and for a second, it felt like I'd made it. But not everyone was cheering. I saw a few familiar faces in the back, arms crossed, expressions hard as steel. The first few weeks flew by in a blur. Business picked up like wildfire, and the training program, it was a hit from day one. Watching those kids light up while learning how to rebuild carburetors and change brake pads. Man, it brought me back. Reminded me why I fell in love with this work in the first place. But progress, it always ruffles feathers. Some of the old shop owners around here started running their mouths. Said I'd sold out. Said Vivian was using me. That I was just a pawn in some rich woman's game. And then, one evening, I showed up to find the side of the building spray-painted. Trader in big red letters. Vivian pulled up just as I was scrubbing it off. She walked over, quiet at first, then her jaw clenched. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice sharp and cold. "No idea," I said, wiping harder. "But it doesn't matter. I'll take care of it." She stepped closer. "It does matter, Lucas. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about what we're trying to build." True to her word, she didn't let it slide. The next morning, she brought in a security company. Cameras went up on every corner. "This is a little much," I told her. She shook her head. "When you try to change things, you're going to piss people off. This isn't overkill, it's being ready." I respected the hell out of that. She didn't flinch. Not once. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't wear on me. All the pushback, the whispers, the sideways looks. One night, after a long shift, Vivian caught me staring off while locking up. "You're second-guessing all this, aren't you?" she asked. I sighed. "I'm questioning everything, if I'm being honest. Mostly, I'm wondering why you're still here. You don't need any of this." She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw something raw in her eyes. "Maybe I do," she said softly. "My dad used to tell me the only way your life counts for something is if you leave the world better than how you found it. This is how I do that." That hit deeper than I expected. I realized then this wasn't charity. This was personal for her. And just when I thought things might start to settle, Travis showed up. He was one of the local guys. Ran a shop a few blocks away. Showed up with two buddies, all puffed up chest and attitude. "You think you're better than us now?" he shouted as he walked in, loud enough to make everyone stop what they were doing. I walked outside to meet him, kept my stance calm, but I was ready if it came to more than words. "I'm not better than anyone, Travis," I said evenly. "I'm just trying to run my shop." "Your shop?" he scoffed. "This ain't your shop anymore. It's hers." He jerked a thumb toward the office window, where Vivian was talking with one of our suppliers. I stepped forward, my voice low and steady. "Watch your mouth." He leaned in, smirking. "Or what?" Before I could answer, Vivian stepped out the door. "Is there a problem?" she asked, cool as ice. Travis flinched just a little but recovered fast. "Yeah, there's a problem," he snapped. "People around here don't like what you're doing." She raised an eyebrow. "People? Or just you?" The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I stepped in before it boiled over. Travis stared me down for a beat, jaw tight. But then he turned, muttering under his breath as he and his buddies slunk off into the night. After they were gone, Vivian looked over at me. Her face was calm, but her voice was low and serious. "That won't be the last time someone tries to shake you. I can handle it," I told her, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. "I know you can," she said, "but you don't have to handle it alone." Those words stuck with me. She wasn't just talking about business. She meant everything. As the months rolled on, the shop started to become something bigger than either of us expected. We were doing more than fixing engines. We were offering free repair clinics, helping folks who couldn't afford work done on their cars, and teaching local kids how to turn a wrench and build something with their hands. Vivian's dream was coming alive, and I was proud to be part of it. But the more we grew, the louder the criticism got. Some folks just couldn't stand seeing us succeed. I started asking myself if this dream was really worth the heat it brought. That pressure hit a breaking point one night when I was closing up. Streets were quiet, too quiet, and my gut told me something was off. I turned toward my truck, and there they were. 3 guys stepped out of the shadows. Travis led the pack just like always. "Burnin' the midnight oil?" he said, his voice dripping with something between mockery and threat. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Just wanted to remind you where you come from," he said, walking closer. "You think you're some hotshot now? Backed by money that ain't even yours. Walk away, Travis," I warned him. He laughed, that same hollow sound I'd heard before. "Or what? Gonna run and call your lady boss to come protect you?" My fists clenched. My heart was pounding. "I don't need saving," I said. "But I'm not gonna fight you. Not here. Not like this." He leaned in, smug as ever. "That's what I thought." Then he turned, but not without tossing over his shoulder. "This ain't over, Bennett. Not by a long shot." Next morning, I told Vivian everything. She was livid. "This has gone too far," she said, pacing my office like a storm about to break. "I can deal with Travis," I told her. "It's not just him," she snapped. "It's all the people who think they can scare you off. They don't see what we're trying to do. They just see a threat." "Then let him see it," I said, "because I'm not walking away. Not from this shop. Not from these kids. Not from us." She stopped pacing, looked at me, softer this time. "You really believe in this, don't you?" "I do," I said, "and I'm not backing down." That lit a new fire in her. From that point on, she was even more driven. She started hosting community meetings, bringing in local leaders, trying to get everyone rowing in the same direction. Her energy spread. People who had been unsure before started showing up, started believing. But not everyone bought in. Travis and his guys stepped up their attacks. They slashed tires in our lot, spread nastier rumors than before. One night, they even chucked a brick through the front window of my house. Vivian wanted to call the cops. "Enough is enough," she said. "That'll only make it worse," I told her. "And doing nothing tells them they can keep getting away with it," she shot back. We ended up meeting in the middle. She brought in private security for both the shop and my home, and I started paying closer attention to everything, every shadow, every sound. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. Kept the worst of it at bay for now. Meanwhile, the shop kept growing. The training program took off. We teamed up with local businesses to help kids land apprenticeships. Watching them go from nervous beginners to confident techs was something I never knew I needed, but it became one of the most rewarding parts of my life. Travis wasn't done, not by a long shot, and I had a gut feeling something big was coming. I just didn't know when. That when came one night I won't ever forget. I was working late, finishing up a brake job, when I heard glass shatter out front. I dropped my tools and ran outside, and there he was, Travis, crowbar in hand, standing in front of the shattered window like he'd been waiting for this moment. "This ends now," he growled. There was no time to think. Instinct kicked in, adrenaline pumping hard. Next thing I knew, I was nose to nose with him. "You've been a thorn in my side long enough," he spat. "Somebody's gotta put you in your place." "You don't scare me," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. Then he swung. I ducked just in time. The fight that followed was messy. We wrestled, traded blows, knocked over a stack of tires, and damn near busted the front door off its hinges. It wasn't pretty. Then came the sirens. Police pulled up fast and broke us apart before it got worse. Travis got cuffed right there in the lot. I was left with a busted lip, a sore rib, and the kind of tired that sinks down into your bones. Vivian showed up at the station not long after. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw the worry written all over her face. "This has to stop," she said as she drove me home. "It will," I told her. "Travis is done. He won't be coming back." But even as I said the words, I didn't fully believe them. I'd learned by now that just because someone's gone doesn't mean the trouble is. Still, things did start to settle after that. The shop kept growing. The kids in the program flourished. And something incredible started to happen. Folks from the neighborhood began to rally around us. They didn't just bring their cars in. They brought trust, pride, community. But even with all the good, that feeling lingered. That sense that success always came with a shadow. That maybe another storm was just waiting for its chance. Vivian didn't let it faze her. She stayed focused, pouring herself into the work like always. Her fire didn't burn out, it burned brighter. And somehow, watching her dig deeper lit something back up in me too. One afternoon, we were standing in the shop, watching the kids work on an old pickup. She turned to me and said, This is why we're here. Giving folks a shot, hope, a way forward. And just like that, it all came rushing back. The reason I stuck with it. The reason I fought through the mess. It wasn't about tools or engines or even the business itself. It was about purpose. As the weeks rolled into months, that garage, once just a broken-down shop with a leaking roof, turned into something so much more. It became a symbol of change, of resilience, of hope. Vivian and I threw ourselves into keeping it alive. And slowly, the rumors faded. The side eyes stopped. The bitterness lost its voice. In the end, this whole thing wasn't just about fixing up a shop. It was about proving that even in a place forgotten by most, you can build something good. That with enough heart and fight, real change is possible. Vivian's dream didn't just rebuild a garage. It rebuilt lives, including mine. And as I stood outside that place, looking at everything we built, listening to the laughter of kids learning something that might carry them further than they ever thought they could go, I knew I was right where I was supposed to be.